You're getting cash flow every month from it. And then when your child at 18 is ready to go to university, it's paid off. It's an asset that you could sell and pay for their entire college education, or it's an asset that will continue generating monthly cash flow that can help cover the expenses.
From the trials. Okay. Hey everyone, this is one of the biggest dreams come true. I can't wait to share this with you. This is me and Sharon Lechter sitting down. Sharon Lechter is a co-author of 24 books. I think I've never met anyone written 24 books before. 24 books, including a very, very famous one called Rich Dad, Poor Dad, the whole Rich Dad series. She was the leader of the Rich Dad company. She's written books under the Napoleon Hill Foundation brand and a bunch of other areas. We're going to talk about personal finance. We're going to talk about how to understand and invest in assets. We're going to talk about how to live out your dreams as a business owner and as an entrepreneur, or for that matter, as a teacher and a salaried employee. I really encourage you to listen in if you care about how to either build wealth, to build a career, and really have the freedom in your life to pursue the dreams that are important to you.
Are we live?
So hey everyone, Faurholt here. Super excited to be here with Sharon Lechter. Sharon, it's such a pleasure to have you.
It is an honor to be here.
It's my honor to have you. I'm super excited to meet you. 24 books sold, including Rich Dad, Poor Dad, new books under the Think and Grow Rich Napoleon Hill area focus. Mm-hmm. A lot of them focus, as far as I know, all of them focused around how do you create sustained wealth and how do you become happy in the process of doing that. Is that a fair framing of everything?
They're all based on money, success, business, basically understanding how to become a master of your money, not a slave to it.
Fantastic. And I guess that's a challenge for a lot of people, right? That we very quickly, either we accumulate wealth and we become super afraid of losing it, or we become a slave of trying to get it. Is that sort of what we're...
It doesn't matter what your address is or what language you speak. It's the same around the world, everywhere I go. We're not being taught about money in school. And so when you're not taught about something, you fear it. And so you, as a small child, when the topic of money comes up, your parents say, we can't afford it. Or in America, we say, money doesn't grow on trees, or pinch your pennies, save for a rainy day. And all of those comments that you hear as a child are negative. And so you grow up money negative, all of a sudden you have this scarcity mindset, and you're afraid you're never going to have enough. And when you reach some success, you're afraid you're going to lose it.
And this is so fascinating because that's one of my big problems, right? I've done 3 exits now out of the business I founded, the biggest one, a couple $100 million valuation. But I have still, in so many ways, my dad and my mom, which is middle class mentality. So I'm always so afraid of losing my money. My biggest problem in the last 10 years is I didn't risk enough capital in a way. And I'm not meaning risking to risk. How do people get out of that? Is that common, first of all? Am I the only one, or?
Oh, it's very common. And you've already accomplished a lot by acknowledging it and recognizing it so that you can start dealing with it, because it's very common. And that's, again, it's because people are taught to exchange time for money. All right? In school, we're trained to be employees or to be professionals, right? So you're exchanging time for money. And that's not how you get wealthy.
No.
You get wealthy by buying, building, and creating assets. So instead of spending your time for money, you invest time in creating, buying, and building assets, just like you've built lots of different companies. Those are assets. And my favorite word on earth is assets. I say assets are sexy, right? Because that's what defines wealth.
And I know you guys and your former partners and everything have a good definition of that, because I think a lot of people are mistaking what is an asset and what is a liability, right? Am I right to say there's a lot of confusion there?
Right. So in Rich Dad, the series, we said assets feed you, liabilities eat you. Assets put money in your pocket, liabilities take money out of your pocket, right? So there's good debt and there's bad debt. So you need to be able to understand the difference.
So let's talk about this. What is good debt?
Well, good debt is where, let's use a rental property as an example. You have a rental property that you put, and I'll use US dollars just so I can have the numbers right.
Any currency works.
$20,000 down, a bank gives you $80,000, it's a $100,000 property.
Yeah.
Well, your monthly expenses on that property is being paid for by your tenant through the rent. And so you have a positive cash flow at the end of each month. That's an asset that is working for you.
Yeah.
And that's an asset that is an income generation. So you are financially free when the income from your assets exceeds your monthly expenses.
Yes.
And that's what, and it doesn't have to be millions of dollars.
And that's good debt. Good debt is when you take out money to buy a business or to buy an asset of some sort that provides you capital or gives you cash flow.
That is being paid for, the debt is being paid through the cash flow of the asset.
Yes. And then what is bad debt?
Well, bad debt is credit card debt for a bigger car or a bigger screen TV, any kind of debt that is not propelling you forward through an asset. Deciding that you need that new outfit even though you don't have the money. Don't buy something unless you can pay for it in cash. Don't put things on debt unless it's good debt.
And I'm fascinated by functional knowledge, but I'm also fascinated by psychology. Mm-hmm. And I think there's a big element of psychology in this, right? There's a big element of we want to beat the Joneses, right? We want to look better than our neighbor or whatever it is. Why do you think that's important to people? Why do people go out and put themselves into? Because I find it fascinating. I buy cheaper clothes than a lot of people who have less money than I have. Like I put a post live yesterday where I was buying my clothes in Zara, and I said, I'm just one success away from buying secondhand, right? Because I've always bought cheaper and cheaper clothes the better I did. Mm-hmm.
And that is, if you, the millionaire next door, right?
Yeah.
He's talking about that. The millionaires drive Fords as opposed to Mercedes. And that's certainly one way to look at it. The other thing is to make sure that if you want something, you buy an asset that the income can generate for you to buy what you want. So expand your means to the level to live the life that you want. But I think you're absolutely right. In Outwitting the Devil, which was the manuscript that was hidden away for 73 years, Napoleon Hill talks about the fear of criticism. And that is what happens when you talk about keeping up with the Joneses, right? Mm-hmm. Wanting to look good, even though if you can't afford it, people are, and it's that impulse shopping also. Yeah. And it's something that's, again, it all comes back to the mindset, which is how we started this conversation, that mindset about money, needs versus wants, right? And that I got to have it. I got to have the latest fashion. I have to have the latest shoes, the latest, the latest Escada or, whatever the outfit is, because you feel like you have to show up.
Yes.
And have your friends see that you're still on the latest trend.
So if I'm sitting here with that issue, I was sharing, I have a problem. Like I keep buying the latest clothes I can't afford. I buy the latest iPhone. I go on the expensive holiday I can't afford. What's your advice for me? Like, how do I get out of that? Because that's such an inherent part of that person being that person, or me being me in that context.
Well, tongue in cheek, I say, if you're digging a hole, the first thing you do is stop digging, right? Yeah. And then you figure out how to repair it. There's something, I used to call it my 2-minute rule, because I happen to be I'm not a big shopper, but when I shop, it's like, I want one thing. Well, yeah, this looks good. This looks good. So walk
sure, other people have tried that.
Yes. And so, that's, all these stores are set up to, to get you to buy multiple things, right? And so I have a lot of people that I talk to that are impulse shoppers, and I say, what I started doing, it was probably 10 years ago. My daughter came over and helped me clean out my closet, and she said, I gave a bunch of clothes to Goodwill, gave away, that still had tags on them, and she was like, so, well, that's not a very good thing for me to be sharing, is it? So but
I love that even you are not perfect. I think that's really valuable for people to know.
Never. Definitely not perfect. But I'm kind of said, all right, next time when I'm in the store, I know what I want to buy. If there's something else that I'm going to just walk away for 2 minutes. Mm-hmm. And after 2 minutes, if I still want it, I'll go back and get it. 9 times out of 10, I don't go back and get it. And so the proof was in the pudding. Just last year, I was going through my closet, and I had very few things tags still on it. But, it's the only person that can control those emotional actions are you. Mm-hmm. And when you start recognizing that when you make those decisions, you're just making your future more bleak because you're spending money that's not propelling you forward.
Ironically, it's going to make you less likely to have that clothes or that car in the future buying it today.
Yes. Yes. And, I tell everyone, it's not what you do for your paycheck.
Yes.
It's what you do with your paycheck.
Yes.
And if you are investing first, then let that cash flow from your investments pay for the things that you want, but not your hard-earned money that you should be turning around and investing in other assets.
And I think that's a valuable point here. So what you're saying, if I have to paraphrase a bit, is you're saying, look, it's not about not enjoying life. It's not about not buying the Ferrari or buying the house you want to going on the holiday, but it's about getting the asset that gets you the cash flow so you can afford to do it. Is that right?
Exactly. I recommend to young families that are just getting started, instead of putting money into a savings account for the child's education, go out and buy that little house, that rental property. Have your tenants, amortize it over 15 years. Have your tenants pay it down, right? So you're getting cash flow every month from it. And then when your child at 18 is ready to go to university, it's paid off. It's an asset that you could sell and pay for their entire college education, or it's an asset that will continue generating monthly cash flow that can help cover the expenses.
And if I had to play the devil's advocate for a second, I could argue, I would say, but Sharon, aren't you saying in a way, enjoy life later? I mean, aren't we sort of forgetting to enjoy life at our youth?
No, in that example, you're getting additional cash flow every month right now.
That's a good point.
And that additional cash flow and about the future. The other piece of it is you want that Ferrari, right? Okay, so maybe delay a year. Invest that money in an apartment complex. That's generating the revenue, and that you can then pay the payments on the Ferrari, maybe even in 6 months. But let's look at an asset, get that. And what happens is all of a sudden you got the Ferrari paid off in 5 years, and you still have the apartment complex generating that monthly cash flow. It's just a matter of changing the way you think. Instead of letting that money go out the door on the Ferrari and it depreciates as soon as you drive it off the lot, put that money into the apartment complex and let the cash flow pay for the monthly payments on the Ferrari.
And then somebody may be listening to this or watching this and saying, well, I'm working, I'm a social counselor, or I'm a teacher, or I'm whatever. You're talking about buying an apartment complex. I mean, this sounds really advanced and complicated for me. How do I get started? This even for me?
Well, I have a lot of teachers that I work with that they don't have high salaries, but they find a way to buy that small rental property, the first one. And then, because that's the good debt, all right? The bank is giving you the money. The bank is giving you the money, so you don't have to come up with all of it. And yet they don't own the property. You own 100%, but you've only had to invest 20%. And so by doing that, you have the opportunity to leverage, and you have great credit, because particularly if you're a teacher, if your credit's good, you have the ability to get that bank to support you in creating a more stable financial environment. Because when people talk about having their assets in stocks, there's all kinds of different assets: rental properties, businesses. Your stocks, bonds, mutual funds. And people say diversify. Well, typically personal financial planners say diversify. They're talking about different types of stocks, right? I say diversify across asset classes. Because
stock markets go up and down. I mean, that's what you call beta in a sort of a popular financial term, right?
Exactly. And, if we're looking at potentially, there is going to be another recession, right?
And by the way, this is such a good point. Just for everyone listening, I mean, you're not diversifying by just buying different shares. It's just like line under, exclamation mark, super important point. Sorry, please continue.
Exactly. No, I own businesses, I own real estate, I own stocks, and I other paper assets. And that's diversification, because if there's a correction in the stock market, real estate actually, if you're in that 3-2, the B and C properties, they get stronger because people end up losing their homes. They need someplace to live. So you're providing a service, supporting them, and you're building your own portfolio.
And so going back to that teacher example, so they're sitting here right now, they're sitting in this chair, they're saying, wow, this is amazing. I want to build assets because I want to acquire these things, but you're so right, Sharon, I shouldn't spend my money on it today. I should acquire assets and then ultimately can pay for the things that I want to enjoy in life. But I don't know anything about it. Like, how do I get started?
Well, you reach out. There are a lot of books on the topic. There
Yeah.
are regional seminars that don't cost a lot of money. Don't spend $30,000 to go to a seminar on it. Start smaller. Find a mentor, somebody who's already doing that successfully,
Yeah.
and get their advice. Shadow them in one of their transactions, so that you play with it on paper a little bit.
Yes.
To see how it will look, to make sure, because in real estate, your profit is when you buy it. You
Yeah.
need to buy it right. So you need to have somebody help you go through that process. But it's also important to just surround yourself with other people that are doing what you want to do.
Yes.
We've, so many times.
That's, by the way, that's such an important point, right? So it's about
Yes.
finding that group of new friends. It's not about getting rid of the old ones, but it's about finding that new group of friends who are doing
One
things
of
in
the
this area.
strongest things I talk about is power of association.
100%.
Who are you hanging out with?
Yes.
Are you hanging out with people who want you to succeed?
Yes.
Or are you hanging out with people that look at you trying to do something different and they try and tear you down?
And there are so many of those.
Yes. And it's not because they really, in their heart, don't want you to
No.
succeed. It's because they see you taking positive action and they're not.
Yes.
And so they feel bad, and the way they express that is to try and tear you down.
And by the way, it's so fascinating. I see it in my company sometimes as somebody's really going for it, working hard, trying to achieve, and somebody will go over and say, I think you're working too much, or, be careful, or, don't try so hard, or whatever it may be.
Yeah, because you're making them look bad because they're not working as hard as
Yeah.
they are. So yes, it's that, and I always tell people, you can't change somebody else. You can only change how you react to them.
Yeah.
And if you a friend of mine has this tagline, I love it. Place yourself in the position of highest potential.
Place yourself in the position of highest potential.
And that is hang out with the right people.
Mm-hmm.
Place yourself in a room where you're not the smartest person in the room.
Yes.
And you can learn from them. And it just gets your creativity and your juices flowing. The other thing...
But when you do that, just to be clear, you're going to feel, quote unquote, like an idiot. I mean, you're going to feel less smart than you used to for that period of time. You are going to get smarter.
You're going to recognize that you're not the smartest person
Yes.
in the room. But I will not say you're going to feel stupid. I think you're going to feel triggered.
You're going to feel triggered.
Triggered.
Yeah.
And that trigger can become creativity and intrigue and
Yeah.
curiosity. And that's what, a true entrepreneur is very curious.
Yes.
And is out
100%.
there wanting to solve a problem or serve a need. And so if you can put yourself and get yourself triggered in the positive way,
Yeah.
it's very important.
But also in a way, what I was thinking is, you may feel stupid, and of course you're not, but you put yourself with people who are smarter than you on the topic. But in reality, you are actually extremely smart, because you're actually the one who's putting yourself in that position.
Exactly.
So you are actually being as smart as you could possibly be, just
Exactly.
not in that functional area yet, but actually in terms of life, extremely smart.
I often ask people, when was the last time you did something for the first time?
Yes.
And most times they just get this blank look on their face. And I challenge them. I say, well, go out and do something for the first time.
It's funny. I have the exact same thing. I 100% agree with you. So I have, as a kid growing up, in particular as a male who played football and everything else, my knees used to be bruised. My, legs used to have blue marks and everything. When was the last time I hurt myself trying to do something I couldn't do? I come back sometimes from skiing holidays, or I see friends who do that probably more than me, and they come back and say, it was a great week. I never fell once. Okay, but then you didn't try. When was the last time we tried a new sport that we didn't know how to, right? And I think it's such an important point. So please go on. I just think it's such an important point you're saying here.
Well, that's all about you. Off camera, you talked about people wanting to know how to have eternal life.
Yes.
By continuing to explore new things, by continuing to challenge yourself,
Yeah.
by continuing to do things for the first time, you expand your enthusiasm, and enthusiasm is a huge feeder into happiness and longevity. So,
But why do you think so many people don't do that? Why do you think so many people actually stop trying things for the first time?
well, if you think of children, small
Yeah.
ones, all right, they're very curious, they're very creative. They build castles out of pillows and blankets
Yeah.
in the living room, right? And then they go to school, and in school we're taught conformity.
Yeah.
And part of that is important. Living in society, you have to learn how to get along with other people.
Yeah.
And they end up graduating from school and they have their career. And that's kind of same thing every day. And they get comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Well, along with that comfort comes complacency, because you're in the same rut every day doing the same thing. And then something happens in our life and we have a crisis and we're thrown into chaos because change, people are not, this is what we're talking about this week, leading through change.
Yes.
Change is the essence of life.
100%.
And what happens is you get into this rut and you have chaos. How do you get out of it? By becoming curious and creative again.
Yes.
And so I tell parents, make sure you're constantly giving your children the opportunity to remain curious and creative.
And I think one of the fascinating things, and I've tried this and I've seen that happen in my life, and I think many people, is when you become successful in sort of normal ways and terms, you tend to find a path. Once you find that path, you actually become sometimes less creative because you want to go for what already works. Mm-hmm. We have and I have yet to find out if it's true or not, but Scandinavian Airlines, SAS, have a policy, as far as I've heard, which is if you survive as a pilot a crash, you're not allowed to fly again because your brain goes back to solving the problem the same way. So we had an example here of a pilot who landed a plane where, as far as I know, he managed to move the entire passenger set from one side of the plane to the other. The wing went in through the plane and could have hurt a lot of people. Nobody got injured. He did an amazing job. But the problem is he may go back to that same solution next time, no matter what input he gets. So he gets back to
post-traumatic syndrome, huh?
Yeah, or in reality, in life, we actually tend to go back for what worked for us before, right? We make these rules up in life. And so I wonder if you find that as well, that sometimes successful people, when they get an element of success, and I guess it's a middle-class problem to some degree as well, is they'll go back to that solution again and again, not realizing that they need to do more of what got them there. They'll play it safe once they got a little bit of wealth, for example.
Well, I think you can see that in companies that have been mega companies that disappeared. Motorola in the cell phone industry, they did not, they didn't think smartphones were a thing of the future.
Yeah.
All right, so they got completely left in the dust. Kodak, who did not go into digital photography.
Yeah.
Gone. So and that's this whole concept that you have for the summit this week of leading through change. That leaders don't just need to lead through change; they need to create change because the world is changing around us. Employees today are not like they were 20 years ago.
No.
And if you don't understand that, and if you're not creating an environment that's going to be fertile and support the people that are there today, I tell people I work with, put in a revolving door because they're not going to stay.
Yes.
The younger generation, they want to feel ownership in what they do. They want to, and if you're not allowing that creativity at that level, they're not going to hang around.
And how do you think you built that into your business? That creativity, that desire, that ability to try new things. So you avoid the Kodak, Motorola problem, etc. I mean, you've worked with Walt Disney. Do they manage to do that because they've been immensely successful?
Oh, yes, they constantly redefine how they do business. But they also have core principles that they've never wavered from.
Yes.
In how to treat their customers. And so you have core values.
Core values.
And then, but also innovation.
Yes.
And understanding, where, if you think about, as an example, Fortune 500 companies, all right, 30 years ago, they were 80% bricks and mortar, 20% intangible assets.
Yeah.
Today, they're 86% intangible assets and 14% bricks and mortar.
Yeah.
All right, so the world has changed with the digital age, and companies that kind of put their head in the sand because this is the way we've always done it. I love it when somebody says that to me. Well, this is the way we've always done it. And I go, well, then maybe you should think about it another way, right? Or in publishing, somebody say, we don't do it that way. I go, why not? All right, and I'm going to be sharing this in the next day. That's my mantra. Why not?
Yeah.
I think an entrepreneur challenges the status quo.
It's funny, by the way. We had that debate, and you've written all these great books. We had that debate with our book publisher when we came out internationally with the book. And I said, because the Danish one did very well, and we had our faces on the front cover. And they said, well, you can't do that because only famous people have their face on the front cover. And I said, but that's even more reason to do it because then everybody will wonder, who the hell are these people? Should I know them, right? And there will be there Anthony Robbins and Sharon Lechter with her face or whatever it is, right? And we'll be right there next to them, right? And so unfortunately they didn't go for it because they were so stuck in you can't do that because only famous people do that.
When we were originally looking for a publisher for Rich Dad Poor Dad, quite a few of them wanted it, but they wanted us to go to a red cover, a black cover, or a green cover, because that's what was the traditional business finance books.
Yes.
And we said, that's why we want purple. We don't want to be like everybody else.
Yes.
We want to be purple, the royal,
Yes.
and we want to stand out. And now if you go into a bookstore, those few that are left, what do you see a lot of in the business and finance section? You see a lot of other purple books.
Yes.
Because of the success that we had.
Yeah.
And so you have...
So next time it's the pink one, or not, next time it has to be something else.
You have to take that road less traveled.
Yeah.
You need to rise above the noise.
Yeah.
And you have to challenge. When people say we don't do it that way, say, why not?
Yeah.
Let's look at it. Because the world today, when we published Rich Dad, Poor Dad, there was no internet. There was no Amazon.
Yeah.
So how we created success back then is not how you create success today. And you have to understand that, and you have to know that, what's coming down the pike, and position yourself to be able to have those change be advantageous to you, not roadblocks.
And so the way I think about that a lot is, I think a lot of companies are playing defense when they should really play offense. How do you think about that?
Yes, I use the term, the world is reactive.
Yes.
When we need to be proactive.
Yes.
And something that is, and that's something, my husband is an attorney.
Yes.
Right? And he, because of his training, he's an engineer and he's an attorney. So as an engineer, he's very deliberate. And I go, oh gosh, this is going to happen. I want to do this so that we make sure it doesn't happen. And he's been trained to be reactive. And it drives me nuts sometimes, but that's his talent. His superpower is understanding how to position things to get the greatest success. I'm much more of a proactive person. I want to make sure I steer us around roadblocks before they even appear.
Yeah.
So.
And do you think that proactive mindset is it's not only about thinking in the future, but it's also about taking responsibility over yourself and really everything? I had that discussion with somebody yesterday where I said, look, honestly, everything that happens in my companies is 100% my responsibility. Somebody steals money, it's my responsibility. Somebody, is the wrong person, it's my responsibility. Somebody's not happy, it's I just think everything. And I think it's, I always say this, I have never had a bad boss. In my entire life, I've never had a bad boss. I've had bosses that other people thought were bad, but I've never had it. Like a boss who's too micromanaging, great, I learned from that. Somebody who's too hands-off, great, I have to be more proactive. Mm-hmm. He's very right in what he tells me, great, I learned from that. He's very wrong in what he tells me, great, I have to learn to think for myself.
Right. As I say, you are the CEO of your own life.
Yes.
And so as almost human nature, so many people want to lay blame or justify. Right?
Yeah.
I call that's below the line thinking.
Yeah.
Lay blame and justify, make excuses.
Yeah.
Right. But being accountable, responsible, is all about standing in your own power and taking control of where you're headed.
Yeah.
And in Outwitting the Devil, there's a thing called, if you're a drifter, you kind of go with the flow and, whatever, want to go, where do you want to go to dinner? Oh, I don't care, wherever. You're allowing life to happen to you. Mm-hmm. If you're a non-drifter, right, you're using your mind, you know what you want, you're headed there, and you are in control of your destiny. And that, there's a difference. And sometimes in life, there are things that you don't need to have control over, and you can be a drifter. But overall, in business, if you want to be successful, you need to be in control of what you want. And do you get off course? Of course.
Yes.
But it's like sailing. If you're a sailor, you know where you want to go, and you get off course, you just recalibrate and get back in line with where the destiny is.
And so I guess to that, it's so important to have that destiny in mind. Mm-hmm. I mean, 3G Capital, which is one of the biggest or more successful private equity funds in the world, the people who build AB InBev and took Burger King and all those things, they have this thing called Dream Big, that big dreams make people sort of swim or sail in the right direction. Do you think about that as well? Do you have a goal? Do you have a place you want to get to?
Well, I launched the Play Big movement. So Dream Big, but Play Big movement about 2 years ago, because I had almost got to the point where I thought I was going to retire. And I said, no, I need to refire. There's more for me to do. And it's too many people stop playing big.
Yeah.
And some of it is they get to that comfort level.
Yeah.
And so the business is doing all right. Many companies that I mentor where their sales have gone skyrocketed
Yeah.
and then they plateaued, many times it's because they've stopped creating new associations.
Yes.
They've stopped looking for new markets. They're trying to kind of sit on their laurels and hope that the company's going to just continue having the same level of success.
again. Yeah.
Yes. And it's like I have a personal success equation, which is combining your passion and your talent, which is all about you. Mm-hmm. And most of us stop there. We feel like we have to do it on our own because that's what school teaches us. But truly, to be successful, it's the one is times A, which is association, the power of association. Make sure you have the right people on your team.
Yeah.
Whether it be advisors, mentors, strategic partners, your employees, all of those are your associations that can take you to where you want to go. Times A, which is taking action.
Yeah.
How many times do we know we're supposed to do something?
Yes.
We just don't do it.
Yeah.
Okay, very often.
Yes.
And then, of course, at the end, I said, I think there's another element that make people successful that others don't, and that's they have faith. They have faith in themselves. They have faith in what they're doing. They know that it's needed and necessary. And when you have faith in your mission, it takes it outside of you. Mm-hmm. And it gives you that courage to jump out of bed and do it. Because every successful business either solves a problem or serves a need. Mm-hmm. And if you remind yourself of that, it gives you that courage to keep going because you are creating value.
So let's talk about those three, because those are really three interesting things. So if we start with the last one, faith, is there an element of, can you believe in yourself too much? Can you lack self-insight? So you think you could become the president of the United States and yet you're not acting or doing or having the association or anything else to get there, right? I find, not being American, I find sometimes watching, American reality TV programs, a lot of people are out of touch with, where they really are in their lives and what they think they deserve in a way.
Well,
you have too much faith in that sense. Yeah.
Well, I would challenge it. They may call it faith in themselves, but I would say that it's probably arrogance.
Arrogance,
faith. Yeah. And sometimes there's a fine line.
Yes.
Because ego is not all bad.
No.
All right. Having a healthy ego is important to be successful. You don't want to be afraid of your own shadow. I mean, in America, only 1.7% of women-owned businesses make over $1 million a year.
Okay.
And that's a tragedy.
Wow.
And the primary reason, from my perspective, in my opinion, is because women are fearful. Yeah. And they won't step out. They don't have faith and confidence in themselves. Yeah. And so they don't reach out to find those associations. They don't come together to help each other win. Yeah. And that's something that I have a mission to try and change that. And the same thing everywhere I go. The stats I have are U.S., but it's the same thing everywhere. Women don't have that confidence, and it's from decades in history of feeling, they don't deserve it. They're not good enough, and we have to get past that.
But and sometimes being judged more than men when they actually do finally have the faith.
Yes. Men are confident.
Yes.
Women are something else.
Something else.
Not a nice term. No. So, yes, each of us has to determine what we need to do to be successful. Mm-hmm. Ego is important. Mm-hmm. Okay, then you cross that line to arrogance. Mm-hmm. And there's a difference between ego and arrogance. And arrogance, I think in reality, arrogance actually generates short-term returns because they're bullies. They get out there, they push it. People are afraid of them, so they have this short-term success, but long-term loneliness. Yeah, and it's because they're not including the people that are helping them create that success.
So faith, some kind of big dream, big mission, big idea. Action. Tony Robbins would say, take massive action. I like that idea. Is that the same?
Yes.
Yeah. Do you think people take too little action often?
Yes. Or in the difference between what Tony and I talk about, and it's not a huge difference, but I really focus on in today's business world, speed to market is so important. I don't need to tell you that because you've had so many successful business. And so When I was at the height of our success with Rich Dad, I had 5,000 employees working for me, but only 17 on my payroll.
Yes.
Okay, they were in other companies that were paying me to do business. So I was having to talk CEO to CEO. I like that a lot more than 5,000 personalities. And so understanding the power of strategic alliances and joint ventures and that power of association is really my superpower.
Yes.
And it's what I help people find, how they can build and leverage and scale through using other people's money, other people's time, other people's resources.
Yes.
So.
And that's such a fascinating thing. So there's a company based out of Hong Kong, China called Li & Fung, which I think there was a book written about called Flat World or something like that. And Li & Fung basically produce a very big proportion of the things that you would see at Walmart or other stores. They don't own any factories yet. They're the biggest clothing manufacturer in the world, or one of the biggest. But they do that exactly by association, network. So they call it network orchestration, which is really building networks of what you need to do. And so I find that a lot of people are afraid to use external parties because they think, well, that business is going to make money on me doing this, so I better hire the people myself. And my feedback always to that is, well, first of all, profit margin is not that large, but second of all, they have incredible economics of scale. Third of all, it's worth a lot to not have to be good at everything. How do you tell people to make sure they don't hire everybody? Why not having 5,000 people on your payroll and rich
Would you rather have 20% of $1 million or 20% of 10,000?
Yes.
Okay, and that's the power. Plus, if you think not only employee power, but geographic. Okay, you may be located right here in Denmark, and you have something that could really go gangbusters in the U.S.
Yes.
Do you want to go there and start your own company and find people and hire them and rent office? Or do you want to find a company that's already in business and successful that can add your product into their product line and be able to leverage what you do, and you end up with another source of revenue, another income stream? So you want to look at all those aspects to determine what's the best way for you to grow.
And so one of the things I've found in my companies that's fascinating is that people will judge external parties, external companies, much tougher than they judge sometimes their own teams or their own people. So they will say, like, why hasn't this company sold what I expected, right? And then they will glorify or beautify, if they had that team internally, how well they would do. And I think sometimes there's a challenge there that we think that if we managed everything, it would be perfect because, my God, we're such good leaders and we know everything, right? Whereas the people externally, they're not perfect, but I am perfect, right? I don't know if there's a conflict there sometimes in the way that people think about it.
Well, that just tells me they don't have a strong enough agreement with that other third party.
Could be as well. Absolutely.
Because that's, it's so important when you are outsourcing or when you're doing joint ventures, you need to make sure that you have very tight agreements.
Yes.
And that you have what your expectations are, what your benchmarks are, and what the communication is, monthly reporting, and quality control, because it's your brand, it's your trademarks, you have to protect them. And so that needs to be built into any kind of agreement. And you need to make sure you do due diligence on that partner.
Yes.
I always did, when I say play big, when we wanted to do infomercials, I didn't like them, right?
Yeah.
This is back when people actually watched TV.
Yeah.
And so we partnered with Time Life, the best, highest quality, best produced, beautiful infomercials. And we were the top infomercial for 2 years running. But I partnered with them. They paid us to be their partner, and they had that highest quality. So I didn't have to worry about it. They had the best call center. They were highly trained individuals. So I knew I was playing with a bigger player that had all those facets that I needed to make sure were there.
And I know this is a big belief of you, and you've done a lot of these, as you're mentioning. You did one with Walt Disney as well for a game you create, is that right?
It was our children's talking books.
Yes. Oh, sorry, children's talking books, exactly.
Yeah. Disney, Sesame Street, Warner Brothers, yes.
And a lot of people say, well, I'm giving away revenue, I'm giving away profitability here. But for you, it was still a no-brainer in a way.
Well, we wrote big royalty checks to them. However, this was at a time, 1987, before many of the people listening and watching this were probably born. There were no screens. Kids had no electronic anything. And it was before, again, Amazon, before the internet. And we met the inventor of the first talking children's book. And it was books that had the sound strips down the side. So new technology. And so at that time, bookstores were very quiet places with little old ladies behind the cash register, and they're going, get out of here. We don't want anything that makes any noise. I tell all my techie friends I really had the first disruptive technology. Yeah. But we said, all right, so we can either try and build our own personal brand, one child at a time, or we can choose to play big and align with companies that already have the trust of the parents. Because people want to do business with people they know, like, and trust, particularly when it comes to your children. And so by doing a deal with Disney, Warner Brothers, Sesame Street, we were able to take that company the first year. We were delighted the first year we had $1 million in sales. Well, the second year, amazing. $9 million. Third year, $23 million. And then fourth year, $52 million when we sold the company.
And this is what year again?
This was 87 and 91.
Incredible.
And it was, again, before Amazon, before online sales. They had to literally go into the store to buy them. But why did we grow that quickly? Because we had the trust and confidence of the parents through our alignment with Disney. They validated us. And yes, we wrote big checks to them. But again, I was happy to write those checks. But then fast forward a few years, when I'm building the Rich Dad company, I said, okay, I'm going to turn this around. I want to build the brand that everybody else wants to parlay.
It's your turn to be Walt Disney, okay?
Yes. So I want to be the Walt Disney. I want people paying us, so I want to receive those royalty checks, not have to pay them. And that's what we did. Warner Books came to us and paid us to produce the books for us. Time Life with the infomercials. 50 different publishers around the world to publish our books in their languages. So it became the model, and that's the model we teach people today, is finding that power, creating your brand so other people will pay you to align with you, or aligning yourself with another established brand. Either direction is a beautiful way to do business.
Incredible. And to do what you did with Rich Dad, you have to you have to achieve something first. It's not what you do on day zero.
Yeah, you have to earn it. We the first 3 years I ran Rich Dad out of my home, and we published it through my husband's and my publishing company. And then we got to the point where we couldn't meet the demand, and of course we couldn't get it into the bookstore shelves. So it literally, for 3 years, at the time there was a program where CDs, physical CDs, were sent out to bookstores every month across the world, saying what the titles were, because you couldn't get one on the shelf. And so people would hear us on the radio, they'd call their local bookstore, they'd pull in the CD, they'd find it, and I'd get up in the morning and I'd have a fax, good old-timey fax, with an order for a book that I would then package and send to that store for that person. And so I literally would be taking boxes of books to the post office, to the point where we finally said, okay, we need to find a real publisher. And so Warner Books ended up becoming our publisher. The month we were on Oprah, they printed, distributed, and got onto stores, shelves in the stores, 350,000 copies in a month.
Incredible.
So, it's possible.
Wow.
But you have to earn the right. You have to establish the credibility.
And so talking about having partners again, so you mentioned a bit before, and that was a really important point. I just want to elaborate on that for a second, which is around the contracts, because it's not just getting a partner tomorrow, because there are many partners out there. A lot of them are not going to work for you. So it's about, I guess, due diligence. It's about understanding alignment and having the right incentive structure, I would guess, having the right contract. I mean, what are the elements that people have to think about?
Well, when you're in the midst of this kind of business arrangement, I share with people, when you have high emotion, you're so excited about the possibilities, you tend to have low intelligence. And most people think, attorneys cost a lot of money. Well, they cost you a lot more if you don't use them up front when you need them later. And that's why it's so important to have.
That's a really important point. It costs a lot more to use an attorney later than up front.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes. So it's really important to bring in somebody, and not your brother-in-law that does real estate. You want somebody that is experienced in the business type arrangement that you want to be in. and that they understand the importance of your intellectual property. They understand what the deal is, and then you consider the what ifs. Okay, this is where my husband is excellent because this is where he is proactive. It's like, okay, what if this happens? We're going to do this. Spell out all those issues while you're both still excited about the opportunities.
Yeah.
And I tell all our clients, I say, plan the divorce before you get married, right? In business, while you're both excited, say, well, in 5 years, if you're not excited about this anymore, let's figure out how we're going to divvy it up. And it makes a lot of sense when you're both happy and excited.
Yes.
That's when to put it into paper.
Much easier.
And then be excited about, okay, how are you going to communicate? So for me, when I'm the one dealing with these giant companies, all right, the person I'm dealing with, they may not be in that chair next year or 5 years. And so I need to make sure that my communication with that company is spelled out in the agreement.
Yeah.
So that when that person is not there, I can say, here, this is
Very
what
clear.
you agreed to. This is how we're communicating. And it's something that's so very important, and it's something that can make a relationship fruitful for a long time.
Yes.
Because it's the understanding's there, how you're going to do business together is defined, and what the accountability is.
Yeah.
And then the opportunities to get out. So for instance, the traditional publishing deal is in perpetuity.
Yeah.
And people get so excited because they've got a publisher. And when they sign it, and I go, no, because you no longer own your own book.
Yes.
They own it. And it's like, no, stop. Mike and I, my husband and I, when we did the deal with Warner Books, we turned publishing upside down. And a lot of people use this joint venture model that we created back then. And we were partners.
Yes.
We had equal opportunity, equal asset. They paid us to be our partner because we'd already gotten to the New York Times through our own company. And but we only gave them a 5-year term.
Great.
And said, at the end of 5 years, we can choose to keep going forward, but we can also choose to terminate. And we never let go of the ownership of the copyright.
And this is a really interesting point. I guess I've heard that make sense for 2 reasons, because I've heard that one as well before. One is, if the book really takes off, it's nice and you can renegotiate the deal. We have, I met with Robert Cialdini, who's written, an amazing book, Influence, who could have earned a lot more from his book had he had a deal like that. But then I think the second thing is that books, for many people, is much more than just a book sales. It's a tool to drum up more business. And you may want to give it out for free at some point, or you may want to sell it at a different price.
And you
may
have
want
to pay
distribute
your
it.
publisher 50% off list.
Yes, every time. Are those the reasons, or how do you think about it?
Oh yeah, the foundation has some of these deals that they do that still have some of those terms in them, but when I'm negotiating on my behalf, the book that I have coming out called Exit Rich in April of 2020, we get it at like 20% of the retail price, so we can buy as many copies as we want to cost, basically. And it's important to really control your own destiny, because again, people don't really realize this. Rich Dad Poor Dad was written as a brochure to sell our board game. And had we gone with a traditional publisher, we wanted to be able to give the book away if we wanted to.
Yes.
And many people who write books today, that is like their new business card, it's their calling card.
Yes.
And so you want a deal where you're not going to be paying, $5 a book for your own book. And many of them are like that.
And so you're touching upon something interesting now, which is, should people still write books today, and who should write a book as a whole thing? Because very few people have written as many books as you have, so you're probably the best person in the world to ask. I mean, some people are going to say, well, the book is dead, and all those things, right? And other people are saying it's an incredible tool for drumming up business. I mean, how do you think about it?
It's never been easier to write a book, it's never been cheaper to write a book, because you can do an ebook now.
Yes.
And certainly with the younger generation, and even most of my books now I read on a Kindle, so. Which has really been a hard transition for me, because I like underlining and making notes, but the ability to be able to send something to someone digitally is very good. It's very important.
Yeah.
And there's so many services. Amazon has an incredible service where you can go do the ebook, but you can also have print on demand. So you don't have to have warehouses of books anymore. So it's never been easier to do it. And it's a wonderful lead generating tool. So I encourage people all the time. I had a client, it's now been 3 years ago. She was a young real estate agent, and she worked in her parents' firm.
Yeah.
But she was one of the top agents, but she said, "I just don't get any respect. These old guys just pat me on the head, thinking of me as a kid." And so I said, "Well, let's talk about how we can raise your expertise, because everybody's an expert, right? We want to become the authority." And so I had her write an ebook, which is the 5 questions a buyer needs to ask, 5 questions a seller needs to ask. And these are the things that get they're questioning you all the time. She says, yeah. I said, so do it. Well, she was very proactive. And so she did it. And literally 6 months later, she called me. She said, Sharon, I've got a regular radio show now. I've been a guest on TV several times. And those old white guys that used to pat me on the head, they're now asking me for my advice and asking me if they can send copies of my book to their clients.
Incredible.
Simply because she took what she knew and put it into a tool, an asset. And that everyone can do that. That school teacher we started talking about 20 minutes ago, that school teacher probably has some tricks of the trade that she or he uses to inspire children.
Yes.
Take it and share it in a book.
So, Gary Vee would talk about, creating a lot of content out there, right? And you're talking about, creating a book. Should everyone write a book? Are there people who should not? Or everyone who wants to be proactive about life and go for it should?
Well, anyone who wants to write a book should write a book.
Yeah.
Anyone who has a story to tell that they think can help others should consider writing a book. But no, I'm not going to say everybody should write a book. No.
And what if you're not a good writer? Is there any? Can you do anything then?
Well,
a lot of people are going to say, "Well, I don't know how to write."
There are plenty of ghostwriters and plenty of services now that can help you get books written. Just be careful on what they charge you and make sure you've got the right tools.
Yes. I want to talk for a second about going back to actually where we started, which is about getting rich. Which I usually say there's 2 things that are important to people. I think one is living eternal life, and the other one is getting rich. I mean, you've now been part of you now created these incredible books together with the Napoleon Hill Foundation. You've obviously written 21 other books on that about the topic. And if I want to just go back to the mindset for a second, so we started out talking about the issues about debt and the issues about potentially overspending, and we talked about creating assets. Are there other things? Because obviously Napoleon Hill was a big thinker on exactly this topic, right? What else? How is the mindset that you need to have to, think and grow rich, for example?
Well, I think it starts
in Sharon Lechter's,
Well, it starts with realizing that if it's going to happen, you're the one that's going to do it.
Yes.
And not wait for someone else to do it for you. So taking control of your own financial life and realizing that a lot of people don't even know where they are financially. So the first step is to figure out where you are. Mm-hmm. And sometimes the news isn't very good, but at least it actually you feel like, now I know.
Yeah.
My dad would say, a map doesn't do you any good if you don't know where you are and where you want to go.
Very important.
So figure out where you are financially. Most people have no clue. And then figure out where are the areas of bad debt that you need to decrease, but also how can you start generating more income? And do that through writing a book, through investing. How can you start focusing on income generating opportunities? And maybe you have a full-time job. Well, maybe you start a side business on the side. Whatever you can do to start generating that additional cash flow that will help you start putting an asset. It's like your employees. Once you put it in your asset column, it's there forever.
Yes.
It's generating revenue for you. And you don't have to have millions of dollars to be financially free.
No, that's an interesting point. Let's talk more about that for a second, because I think a lot of people feel like they have to have $10 million, $20 million to really be financially free.
Well, and if you ask financial planners, they say, you have to have a minimum of $5 million when you retire. So, many other people say it's more like 15.
Wow.
But financial freedom, if you use my definition, is when income from your assets exceed your monthly expenses, you're financially free. When your
income from your asset exceeds your monthly expenses. Back to the asset idea.
The assets are generating the revenue to cover your expenses. So you don't have to get out of bed.
No.
Your assets are working for you. When I met Robert Kiyosaki, he had come to see my husband about the idea of patenting the board game cash flow. And I met him at the first beta test, and I just loved it because it's what I had been teaching people about the power of assets, the power of, of real estate, businesses, paper assets, and understanding if you're your only asset, you're in trouble. And so when we met, he had 2 small apartment complexes.
Okay.
He was making $100,000 a year.
Okay.
His living expenses were $36,000 a year. He was financially free. And that's the message I want people to hear. You don't have to have, because what happens is when you have in your mind, I need $10 million or I need $5 million, you get a little intimidated by that.
Very.
But if you say, wow, what are my expenses?
Yes.
And what can I do to start generating that amount of revenue? That makes your target a whole lot more reasonable. Then, once you're at that point, you start duplicating it.
Yes.
And you're going to wake up and you're going to have that 5 million. But you have to start somewhere.
But you really start by thinking about cash flow, not about the 5 million in reality.
Right.
The 5 million is a result of getting your cash flow to work.
Right. Monthly cash flow.
It's a super point. And so is it as simple as that? Those things that you just mentioned? Are there more to it in a way?
It is as simple as that.
And I put quotation marks here because obviously it's difficult to do.
It is as simple as that. The application is difficult because the first thing you have to change is up here.
Yes.
Just like what we started this conversation where you've got tremendous success and you still have those mind things in there, telling you you're afraid you're going to lose it. That's, you're not alone. And I think it's something that several programs that I created, I have mindset action steps as well as money action steps.
Yes.
Because you have to start changing the way you think and your process as well.
And if you don't do that, the other thing will not follow.
Well, I mean, you've heard this many times. People who win the lottery and lose it, and they're on the streets 5 years later, are huge. The NFL stars or the NBA stars. So that, they're at the age of 22, they're making millions of dollars. Yeah. And they're living under a bridge at 40, 45. Yes. It's just criminal. It's criminal. It's because they were never taught how to manage it. And they got a lot of good new friends until the money went away, and then the friends go away. And so it's, I call it that sudden wealth syndrome. And that's when all of a sudden you have a lot of cash. If you don't say, I need to train myself, because take some of that money and put it into a trust that you can live off the income from it, and you're set for life. Why aren't they doing that? Because they don't understand how.
And why is it that we don't learn how to think about money? Why is it that, you've been talking about this for now 20 years, 25 years? Is that, I don't know, what, is it 25 years, about 30 years now?
25 is since it.
And why is it that schools don't get it? It should be part of university at the very least, but probably even elementary school.
Mm-hmm. Well, it takes forever to change anything in the school system. Yes. That's why my hair is white. We do now have a law in Arizona that personal finance is a requirement for high school graduation. Okay. There are only 7 states in the country that require that, and that's something that we need to change, in every country as well, because part of it is the teachers are afraid to teach it, okay? The school system is afraid to add one more requirement for the teachers. And so it's parents that have to really stand up and say, our kids need this information.
Yes.
Money.
But is there an issue there that if you're a family who understand the importance of that, you probably already teach it to your kids to some degree at home, and if you're a family that don't understand the importance, you don't teach it, but you may not also push it. I mean, I guess there's a conflict there as well in how much the parents get to push it.
Well, you've probably heard the saying, the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. Why? Because they learn about money at home. Yeah. And so if we really want to level the playing field and make sure every child has an opportunity to succeed, we need to talk about money in school. Yeah. We need to make them understand the power of money, not just the spending power, but the earning power and the ability to invest it.
And so Napoleon Hill lived around, was it Carnegie was at the time?
Andrew Carnegie,
Yeah.
the richest man in the world at the time, back
exactly.
in 1908, challenged Napoleon Hill with writing Think and Grow Rich. Yes.
Exactly. And followed him and a lot of his friends for a 20-year period, I believe you mentioned once.
He interviewed 500 of Andrew Carnegie's closest friends that were all rich.
Yeah.
And thousands of people who considered themselves failures.
Yeah.
And that's why I tell people, that's why Think and Grow Rich is as valid today as it was when it was released in 1937, because it wasn't one man's philosophy. Andrew Carnegie believed that they all had similarities on how they created success.
Yeah.
And so what Napoleon Hill did was he synthesized all this information. It's like a doctoral thesis on success. And if your listeners and viewers have not read Think and Grow Rich, I really encourage them to, because this is valid today as it was when it was released.
And so if I think about the Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which you authored, I'm thinking about your thoughts, and then I'm thinking about something that's 111 years old, 12 years old. Are the thoughts the same? Is it the same thoughts here 100 years later? It really hasn't changed?
They rhyme a lot.
They rhyme a lot, yeah. Exactly.
If you look at every personal finance or personal development writer today, and even leadership, they have nuggets that were in Think and Grow Rich.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because every time I read Think and Grow Rich every year.
Yeah.
And
you read it every year.
Yes. And the book doesn't change, but I do.
Yes.
So every year something else pops out at me.
That's interesting.
I don't remember this being in this book. I've read it, I've read it probably 50 times. And so you may have 3 people tell you the same thing, but you don't get it until the 4th person says it to you. And so part of it is the right message at the right time.
The right message at the right time.
And Think and Grow Rich, when we had the economic recession in 2008 and 9, that's when the Napoleon Hill Foundation reached out to me and asked me to step in and help reinvigorate the teachings of Napoleon Hill, because most people young people didn't know who he was. Yeah. And most of them hadn't heard of Think and Grow Rich. And today my definition of young people is under 50. But anyway, but it was true. People, his teachings were starting to get quieter. Yes. And so we wanted to reinvigorate that. One of the things that helped us do that in a big way was discovering this manuscript, Outwitting the Devil, which had been hidden away for 73 years, because it is a little in your face. And young people today, they like it because it's a little controversial and it's something to talk, it takes on all the taboos. Yeah. And so it really has helped us reinvigorate the teachings, and it's gone around the world. And so I love it. The audiobook, I had them hire 2 different actors because it's a interrogation of the devil. So the devil's voice is this grovelly voice. Yeah. So 2 actors. But and it's really helped people see it. And so young people now are reading Outwitting the Devil and then going back to read Think and Grow Rich. Mm-hmm. And it's actually worked very, very well. And I share that because the messages are very consistent. They're just delivered in different formats. Mm-hmm. And people say, I don't know who Napoleon Hill is. I've never heard of Think and Grow Rich. I go, well, have you heard of the mastermind? That's Napoleon Hill. Yeah. He's the first one that coined the term mastermind. Have you heard of the term pay yourself first? Yes. That's Napoleon Hill. Have you heard the phrase, there's nothing to fear but fear itself? Yes. That's Napoleon Hill. The law of attraction, Napoleon Hill wrote about it in 1919, many, many years before the movie The Secret. Yeah. And so they start you see this awareness. Yes. Because they know his work. They may not know his name, but they know the body of his work.
And you're part of bringing the name and the learnings back to life. Mm-hmm. You mentioned before you're coming out with a new book in 2020 in April. Mm-hmm. It's going to be about exiting businesses.
Yes, Exit Rich.
Exit Rich. Can you just tell us a little bit? I know I want to go and get it, but sure. You were sitting a little bit before. Can you give me a little bit of information?
Oh,
I'd
love absolutely.
To know more.
Well, if you think about it, most people who build their businesses, they're building to the sales line and the net profit line. Yes. But you really want to build the whole foundation of the business, the legal side, the marketing, making sure. A lot of businesses go out of business because they don't have enough funding. And so it's really looking at a holistic look at your entire business and packaging it and making sure it's sound and that you have the greatest intrinsic value in your business, so that when you sell, you are prepared.
Yes.
So many times I have clients that have an opportunity to sell their business, but they have no records to give to the potential buyer, because they haven't been taking care of the housekeeping.
Yes.
And so this helps people say and identify intellectual property that they have that they've never really documented. And so we take people through the aspect of building your business and packaging it so you'll get the maximum profit. And then how to best position yourself and go through that process of due diligence with a potential buyer.
And so it's interesting, having taken in capital rounds in different businesses that I've founded, every time somebody comes in and does a due diligence where they look through the entire business, for those who don't know, which is what investors do before the final signing of documents, you have to prepare all the things you're talking about. And so you always come to this realization, or not always, hopefully not after having read your book, but I've come to the realization every time that there's a bunch of documents I don't have in order. So like your property documents that aren't properly done, that employee you just forgot to do the proper contract work for, or whatever it may be.
You didn't do a work for hire for something that you have a tremendous value. You don't really own it because you don't have a work for hire.
Yes.
Going through and cleaning that thing up is very, very important.
And so interesting, and so many people, I guess, don't think about it until they are in that position where they are finally going through the due diligence, and it's in many ways almost too late at that point.
Oh yeah, and they're scrambling.
Yes.
Absolutely scrambling. And so I wrote the book with a gal named Michelle Seiler Tucker, and she's one of the top business brokers in the country.
Okay.
And with my background as an accountant, CPA, and then as a business mentor, helping people go through business sales and having several exit myself. So she goes through the mechanics that she does as a broker with her clients. I go through the mindset, the concept of things that you need to think about, positioning yourself, understanding, where do you want to find the buyer that you have? How do you make sure you're talking to qualified buyers?
Yes.
And so the combination is pretty unique, and we're very excited. Inc. magazine has picked it up, so we're.
And it's funny, I've never come across a book on this topic before, but it's so important. I mean, how did you come up with the idea?
Well, she reached out to me because she had written a book before, and she wanted the power of association with my publishing background and my name. But it was also a timing when we had just finished doing an online course called The Essential Components of a Successful Business. So it was a natural next step for me to add on to that and to add to my portfolio of books that I've written, because I hadn't really written a book on the topic of building a successful business. So.
And so the very last question, and I know the toughest one of them all probably, 24 books, soon to be 25 books, I guess. Which one, if I've never read a Sharon Lechter book before, what is the first one? All the things we've talked about today, which is the first one that I should pick up?
That's like asking me who my favorite child
is. I know. Exactly. So, but having to choose, nonetheless, which is the first one I should pick up? I know
it depends on who you are.
Okay.
And a woman, I would say Think and Grow Rich for women.
Yes.
Definitely, to understand that you're not alone and to help build that. Yes.
Yes, perfect. Okay.
Definitely I would do that, because that was the foundation asked me, because as I said, Napoleon Hill, when he wrote Think and Grow Rich, they were all men. Women weren't in business.
Yes.
And so I had the honor to look at his concepts and his steps to success through the eyes of successful women. Yes. So I was very pleased with that. And it's a great book. I have over 300 women that I highlight in the book. And then if you have, and then if there's somebody in your life that you've tried to talk to them till you're blue in the face and you just can't get them to wake up, or if you feel like you yourself are kind of crippled with fear, and you just can't get past at that point, Outwitting the Devil is the book that I would recommend. So if you are in business and you're looking for what's the next thing, what else should I be doing? Success and Something Greater, which is my most recent book, is I highlight close to 20 different people on their how they created great success and how they gave back.
I'll just grab them here. Thank you so much. And then I guess last but not least, SharonLechter.com?
SharonLechter.com and the Play Big Movement. I have a private Facebook page called the Play Big Movement, and I have a podcast called the Play Big Movement.
And I know that, because I know that from experience having reached out to you, that you actually answer emails.
Yes.
So actually people can even write to you.
Yes.
How do they reach you?
They can reach me at info@sharonlechter.com.
Perfect. Very good. Sharon, thank you so much. I
Thank
really,
you.
really appreciate it.
It's been my pleasure.
It was
Thank you.
fantastic.
And thank you for what all you're doing to support.
Thank you.